Hello everyone, my name is Jesse Maurer, and I'm the Worship and Creative Arts Pastor here at Maple City Chapel. I want to welcome you to the Maple City Podcast. During today's episode, Dr. Jay Shetler, Senior Pastor here at Maple City, will be sitting down with Kami Schwartz, a local reproductive health doula, and our Stories Pastor, Andrea Miller, to discuss topics surrounding women's mental health. Let's join the conversation now. Here's Pastor Jay.
Well, we are in the middle of a sermon series on mental health called Not Alone, and I've been looking forward to this conversation for a while now. One of the topics we're tackling is women in mental health, and you get to preach the sermon around that topic on Mother's Day.
Yes,
and
so excited for that. I think it's
I am
so
too.
cool.
Not preached before, right?
No, not on a Sunday morning.
Okay.
So, yeah, I'm pretty nervous, but really excited.
Well, I know you were involved when we did Blue Christmas and spoke, and yeah, I can't wait. You're very articulate, so it's going to be fun to have you up there. And it's this topic, and so we're going to dive into it a little bit more today. So I'd love for you to start out by just telling us more about who you are and what you do.
Yes, so I am Kami, and I have 3 daughters with a 4th daughter on the way. So my world is all about
Recent
All women.
news.
Yes,
Very
it's all
recent
about
news.
women.
Yeah.
Yes, it is. Everything that I do and think about is related to women and how we can support women better. But I started off my career as a birth worker at a birth center in the Amish community. When I was like 17, I learned about a doula for the first time. And as soon as I learned about it, I was just like, I know that's what I'm going to do.
So were you working there at 17?
No, I
Okay.
started later after
Okay,
that.
okay.
So
And to be clear, you didn't grow up Amish, but
I
you
did
were
not,
working. Okay.
no, there's a birth center in the Amish community in Topeka that they serve lots and lots of Amish women. So I started there technically as a birth assistant. So I would go in like right before delivery and be there for the actual birth, which was really fun. So that was kind of how I first got immersed in the world. But I was 21 at that time. So I'm actually going on 10 years of birth work this summer, which is exciting. And yeah, so I started my own business as a doula. And a doula is just somebody who is there for the emotional support and the educational support throughout pregnancy and birth, and physical support in the actual birth as well. So I'm not a medical professional, but I'm there for the support side of it, and I love it. I don't see myself doing anything else. Like, I love being in that role, kind of the in-between space between a patient and their provider. So soon after that, I started adding in some fertility education as well. And that was so exciting too. And as I'm like building my business, I'm also feeling this call from the Lord to really like go deeper with it and make it more of a ministry, which I had no idea what that meant or what it looked like. And at the time, I was like, my business is just, it's not faith-based. It's just serving the community through birth. But just really, it was a couple of years of wrestling with what does this look like? And then in 2020, I had I had 2 miscarriages in 2020.
Wow.
And when that happened, I will always remember asking my husband, I was like, why is this happening to us? I just became a fertility educator, a certified fertility educator. And then it was just like my whole reproductive health, was like kind of falling apart. And I remember like he just didn't even miss a beat and was like, you've been saying that the Lord is calling you to make this a ministry. And I have a feeling that he'll use this experience for that. And,
Wow.
I was thinking about it, like really looking back, that was 2020. And the way that I've like grown and changed in the last 5 years because of those miscarriages is just like crazy. It's crazy to think about how different I am now than I was in 2019. And so really that helped me to start to see reproductive health as such an emotional and spiritual experience as well. So it's really kind of the 3, the reproductive health, the mental health, and the spiritual health all go together so much. And so it's been really fun to watch what I think the Lord is doing in that area. I really do think that this is an area that Jesus cares about so much and is so active in, and it's such fertile ground, really, for him to move in and work in. So it's been really fun.
Yeah. Well, I can imagine your own experience would just add to the ability to empathize with and walk with people as they go through that. And all this is such an emotional highs and lows, depending
really
on the
is.
circumstances, which is fertile ground for one, just caring for people, but also for spiritual growth and development and stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's been so interesting because even just in the last 1 or 2 years, I've realized that my whole story is kind of rooted in this. Even at age 12, this is how I really truly met the Lord, in a real way. I was having my own reproductive health issues at age 12 that were really scary to me at the time. And essentially that threw me into a period of really intense anxiety. A couple of months where I was just extremely scared about what was happening in my body and thinking everything must be wrong. And it was, just really intense anxiety. And I really had a very powerful encounter with the Lord through that.
Wow.
Would really say that I was supernaturally set free from that anxiety through just scripture. My mom had written out some scripture for me and just could really feel him take the weight of that anxiety from me at age 12. And that really was the beginning of my, real relationship with Jesus. And so it's just been interesting to see, even from age 12, he was working in this area
Absolutely.
of my life. And he's continued to do that. And now it's so fun to watch him do it in other people's lives as well.
What a testimony of the Lord's redeeming work in your life and how you can use your experience to help other people. I know you and I, we've talked a couple times throughout, especially the last year, of just me having questions. And you've been so helpful, and so kind, so patient, so gracious, where I can come in with so much fear, just anxiety, and you just help wade through that just to understand what a woman's body is made and how God designed it. So I can testify to that too. Yeah.
Yep, absolutely. There's just so many anxieties that women are working through with their own bodies and what's normal and what's not. And, what do I accept as normal? What do I push through? That type of thing. So,
So you mentioned back then anxiety and stuff. Would you say, when did your interest in the mental health aspect of things really develop?
Yeah, I would definitely say in the last 4 or 5 years since my miscarriage. And it's not that I wasn't interested in it before. I have my degree in psychology. That's what I was kind of always leaning towards, that side of things more. But I remember even in 2019, before my miscarriage, just being I want to work in this field, but I don't understand it. I don't know what women are really going through. And that, has completely changed over the last few years. And it's just the more that you learn about your physical body and reproductive health and your hormones, they just can't be separated from mental health. They're just all so closely tied. I can't learn about one without learning about the other.
This is a total side note, but you mentioned your mom, Lowell and Rose, your parents, and your sister Kyla, who works here at the church. I'm just saying that because I will be shocked if at some point I don't call you Kyla in this podcast.
But she was on our first episode.
She was on our first episode, and she works here, and we're around each other a lot. So I'll try not to call you Kyla. But I love your family. You have a great family. Your parents are awesome. So
thank you. Yeah. We love being a part of this church. It's kind of funny to think I've been a part of this church for 30 years, which is crazy to even say out loud because my parents started coming when I was 1 or something like that.
Yeah. Well, it's been awesome. Say more about what you've learned when you think of women in mental health and what women struggle with. And in many ways, men and women all struggle with pretty much everything, but I think there's some things that are unique. I didn't say this earlier, but on Father's Day, we're going to talk about men's issues specific to mental health. So looking forward to that conversation too. But when you think of women that you know and you're around, and both of you obviously are women, so you can speak from your personal experience too, but where are women most vulnerable to struggle with mental health stuff?
Yeah. I think women are just under so much pressure every day. And it's been great in some ways, the way that women have expanded their options and, you know, things like career and motherhood, you know, you can do them both, but then it becomes a thing of you have to do them both. Like it feels like, okay, now I have to do.
Your life isn't complete unless you're doing it all.
Doing it all. And it's every day. It's constant. When we think about like women's work, it's never done, ever. And I think that that gets really overwhelming, overbearing. And even if you spend the day doing great things, there's still, at the end of the day, things you didn't do and things you didn't get accomplished. And I mean, for me at least, that's, I think, the heaviest part, where I can just go to bed every night disappointed in the things I didn't get done. And so there's definitely, I think, a lot of anxiety with that. I don't know how that's for you.
Yeah, totally. I mean, you can do a lot of little things in a day and then have some bigger things go undone. And I'll be kicking myself like, I didn't get this done. I didn't get that done. And my husband, Nate, will say, but you got all of this other stuff done. Like that is just as important and meaningful in the day as one of these bigger projects. Like we'll figure it out. But there's totally a value in how productive can we be, or how efficiency is, how efficient can I be? That's kind of my thing that I can really struggle with, is I want to make time matter. I don't want to waste time. But then that can really stress me out, which I know, like we've talked about, like the effects of stress and anxiety and how that can really affect your hormones internally. So that's kind of where I can get in my head a little bit about how I spent my day and the things that got done and the things that are still yet to be done.
Yeah. I specifically remember a time in my like early adulthood where at that time I was really comparing myself to like the Amish women and how much they get done in a day. And I specifically remember just like coaching myself and being like, you're just going to use every minute of the day to be productive, like all day long. Even if you're sitting down doing something like watching, even if you're watching a show, you're still going to be doing something productive.
Multitask.
Yep. Like that's just how you're going to do it. You're going to have to do these things to keep up. And it's been a constant battle to undo that thinking and to allow myself to be at rest. So even, I would just say like the stress and anxiety piece of the load that women are carrying is so huge.
So how do you work to stay kind of present, kind of attuned to your kids, your husband, you know, in the midst of the demands and the pressure and the stress?
Yeah, it's a constant battle, and it's a constant reminding yourself of what's most important. Like you really just have to go, okay, I could do this or I could do this, and really, you know, weigh out what's most important. And then I truly think Sabbath has been a huge part of my mental health as a mother, because like I said, women's work is not done until you choose to be done. That's just the truth. And so that's been really life-changing for me since my third child was born. So in the last 3 years, really, I wasn't doing any sort of Sabbath. In fact, I used to feel really bitter about Sabbath. I remember, it would have been like 8 or 9 years ago when my first baby was born. We had a sermon here on Sabbath. And I was chasing around my 1-year-old during that. And I had this very sort of bitter thought rise up of like, Sabbath is for men. It's not something that's for women. Like it's not something that we can do. And so for the next couple of years, it was something that I didn't even really try to incorporate. Because again, I was in that mindset of like, I just have to use every chance.
Have to go. Yeah.
And it wasn't until my third was born that I hit a breaking point with it and was like, this is something we have to do. We have to incorporate this practice, not because it's a demand, but I think there's so much wisdom in it, in the way that God has designed it for us. And so that practicing that once a week has helped me to realize again that it's okay to stop and rest when I need to.
Yeah.
Even throughout the week, even when it's not the actual Sabbath day.
Yeah.
A question about that. Do you and your husband have Sabbath on the same day? Because I've heard some families like they're able to do it on the same day, or you have your Sabbath and then he has his Sabbath another day so that he can watch the kids. So I'm just curious.
Yeah. We've done it different ways, and it's still, 3 years in, I think we're still experimenting with it, and we're really flexible with it as well, as far as like, some weeks we do it this way and some weeks we do it that way. At first we did do it separate, where I was doing it on Saturday and he was doing it on Sunday. So we kind of, traded off the load a little bit more. And like I said, it still just totally depends on the week now and what we have kind of going on. But now we more so do it as a family, and it's a family activity where we really get to be present together as a family. Like that's kind of the goal of that day, and to let everything else kind of fall to the side. So like the girls are very much aware of it now. They know like Friday when they come home from school, it's usually a big pickup, the house type of time. And then the goal, and of course it doesn't always happen, but the goal is by Friday evening, we're all ready to like relax together. So that I think has really undone a lot of the narrative in my head that I have to just always keep going.
Yeah. Yeah. And some of those practices are, we'll talk some about different mental health, anxiety, depression, stuff like that. But there's also then just habits that help us stay healthy and build resilience, and how important Sabbath and practices like that are.
Absolutely.
To really stay healthy.
Yeah. No, physically, mentally, and hormonally. I mean, I do have this, I have a 16-week program that I teach for reproductive health, and week 2, we cover Sabbath. I think it's so fundamental to hormonal health as well. It's such a part of the way that we allow our hormones to kind of relax and do then what they're created to do, rather than there's like so much conflict in the body when we're constantly under stress.
I remember when I was in college, freshman, sophomore year, and we had to do a time study. It was a part of our curriculum for the degree I was in. And I brought back my, I think it was just the first week, and my professor looked at it, how tiny I had to write in the margins. It's like there wasn't enough hours on the sheet because I was homework and friends and my job, and I was dating a guy and all this stuff. And he was like, girl, you're going to kill yourself. Like you need to start saying no. You need to help yourself put some limits on this. Which, I was more of a people pleaser then. I still struggle with that today, but he really helped me uncover the beauty of embracing limits as a woman. I don't have to do it all. I wasn't married till 2021. So when I graduated from college in 2017, I had 4 years of just being me, trying to be in ministry full time and being myself, and fighting these lies of what it meant to be a successful woman in today's culture standards, when it was just me and a roommate, but really me. So there were a lot of things that embracing some of those limits of, no, this is the time that technology should go off, or I should go on a walk, or reach out to a friend. Don't always wait for them to reach out to me. Like I had to really get outside of my comfort zone in those couple of years, just to get outside of my mind. Because otherwise I was just tearing myself down.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
that's really good. Yeah, I don't, you talk about kind of the stress and stuff. I don't think I fully appreciate it. I probably still don't, but I'm learning the difference between the physical aspect, tasks and stuff that there's to do, and then the mental load of like thinking about what needs to be done. And a lot of the research would say, even if I'm, as a man jump in, I'll do the dishes half the time. I'm often still not the one thinking about when do they need to be done, what needs to happen next. There's a mental load that most women carry that men don't around those kinds of tasks.
Yeah.
And even if you say, okay, I'm going to take a break from doing, it can be hard to shut off the mind from, what's next, the to-do list and all that. So how do you allow your mind to find rest?
That's a good question, and one that I would definitely still struggle with. Even I had that experience this weekend, right, where it was like, okay, I have an hour to rest, and so I'm just going to lay here, but I couldn't, I couldn't shut my mind off to think about all of the things that needed to be done. It's just something that is really hard to do. And that's why I do think like having that 24-hour period of a Sabbath is helpful, because it does take a few hours to get into that.
Yep.
And yeah, I think it's funny. I feel like I can just be sitting there and my husband can come home and he sees me sitting on the couch. So he thinks, oh, she's not doing anything, you know, but I mean, there's so much going on in there. And yeah, like the mental load of, when we think about food is a big one, right? So like, what are we going to make? What groceries are we going to need for that? Who's going to get the groceries? When are we going to pick them up? All of those different things are so unseen is really the big part of it. And I think that's what's so hard in general about what women do is it feels so unseen. It's not visible to others. And so you can do those things, but then it doesn't always feel like it's noticed or appreciated. And so at the end of the day, it can feel like you did nothing.
Yeah, it's like all the little steps to get to one big thing that's done. Like all the details to follow through.
Right.
Like when you're making a meal, it's okay, you have to make sure you have all the ingredients, but you have to wash them, dry them, cut them, slice. There's a lot of components that can go into it. And more often than not, I think those components take more time than or at least they take more time than I give them credit for.
Yeah.
So I don't plan enough time, and I'm like, I want a dinner to be ready at 5:30 and it's 6, which is not a big deal. But for some reason in my mind, that matters to me.
Yeah. Oh, I really had to undo that like I'm not a worse wife if dinner's ready at 6:30 instead of 5:30.
Right.
Like that was a huge thing for me for a few years too.
Yeah.
This is switching gears a little bit, but I think in our culture, one of the things that makes it hard for women that can lead to mental health stuff is body image stuff and the pressure around looking a certain way. You want to talk about that a little bit and what women experience?
Yeah, absolutely. I think I have noticed even in myself, like sometimes I'll get through the morning and I'll just have like a bad feeling. I'm like, what is this feeling? Right. And then it's like, oh, I weighed myself this morning or, you know, something like that. Or like I started off my day and just didn't like where I was at physically in my body. So it has definitely the potential to bring some depression, but also again, just this feeling of not being able to keep up. And I don't know, I would be curious to hear if you agree with this. Like when we were younger, it was like the ideal body image was to be thin. And then a few years later, it was like, now we're trying to be curvy. And then like now it's like we're trying to be strong, right? And so now that's like what everybody's after, doing all this like strength training and things. And so it's always changing too. I think that's part of it is like, even if you are able to change your body, which is, there's so much complexity with that. And, you know, so even if you're able to change your body, then it like everything changes. And then that's not like what we're going for anymore either. So there's that part of it. And then there's also the hormonal side of weight and how we look. Like it's not just calories in, calories out for women. There's so much more that goes into how we lose or gain weight. And then it works the other way. Like we have weight loss and that affects hormones, or we have weight gain and that affects hormones. And so it's so interconnected, you know, with our mental health and how we feel in our body and how our body's working and how that affects us. There's so much with that.
Yeah, I have 3 brothers. So 2 of them are older, 1 is younger. So when I was growing up, I remember thinking, this is so unfair. Like they can just eat typical stuff, and that is not true of me. Like trying to be conscious of nutrition and all of that, probably even into college still too. But the difference is that I was experiencing even middle school, high school, like that comparison is unfair, 100%. But that's where my mind was like, how can I be who God created me to be? But how do I steward this well when my examples are, well, I have great parents and I have 3 brothers, but all of my friends, we look different. We are different. Yeah. So how can I be a healthy person as I am? And that, I mean, I think that's a question that I can still ask today. That is a question I still chase because I think it refines. It's changing, not necessarily because the answer is different, like a shifting shadow, but because your body changes in as you grow, as you develop. So healthy is variable.
Yeah, and you mentioned the word comparison, which I think is a big part of how we evaluate starting, you know, that preteens and up. And we live in a culture with social media and filters and all kinds of stuff that I would think make it even more challenging. I mean, it's not just the ideal real woman. It's the unrealistic, you know, not even a real person that becomes the comparison.
Absolutely. Yeah, Kyla is always, my sister, is always reminding me, nothing's real on social media. Like, even, you think you see something, you feel like, oh, look at how they are. And she's just always like, nothing is real. That's not what we can even compare ourselves to. So I think that's so important to remember.
You have brought up the word hormones multiple times. Let's talk a little bit about, you know, hormones, the developmental kind of lifespan, things are shifting for women over time, and how that relates to mental health.
Yeah, it is such a huge part of mental health. We know women are more susceptible to depression and anxiety, and a big part of that is because of the hormonal swings that we experience. So I think it'll be easiest to just define two main hormones that we experience as women. So we have estrogen and progesterone. They're kind of our two big hormones. And I like to call estrogen the party planner. So in the middle of a monthly cycle, a woman will have a huge stream of estrogen and kind of a big surge up and down. And I like to call that the estrogen party. So it's a time where mentally we generally will feel really social, excited, creative. There's just lots of energy around that time. And then that leads up to ovulation. And then after ovulation is successful, we have progesterone that comes in, and I like to call her the cleaning lady. So she comes in.
So what was the first one? The
estrogen is the party planner.
Party planner, okay.
Yep.
And the cleaning lady.
And then we have the cleaning lady. So
Gotcha.
we have this great party that happens in the body, and then we have this cleaning lady that comes in and kind of helps put everything back to normal, kind of helps normalize what's going on all over your body. It's not just like a reproductive system thing. It's all over your body. And progesterone really helps you calm down and go to sleep and relax, you know, like you would want to do after you have a party at your house. And while you're sleeping, she cleans everything up for you. So kind of just helps you be at ease. Now, whenever we're having issues with ovulation, we won't make that progesterone. It's very much variable on what's happening with ovulation. And so sometimes we'll have times in our life when we're not ovulating at all. So we're just having this party going on all the time. So I always like to ask people, you know, how would you feel if you had a party at your house all of the time?
Right.
You'd go from feeling social and creative to worn out and cranky and exhausted, and you just want people, you know, out of your space. And so I think that when we talk about the lifespan of, you know, the reproductive lifespan and what women are experiencing, that's really important to know, is that we're really wondering what's going on with progesterone. Because like a cleaning lady, progesterone is a luxury hormone. We really only make it when everything is going well in the body. And so that means it's really vulnerable to things like stress. It's really vulnerable to nutrient deficiencies and things going on in your environment. And so it's really important to be aware of the entire experience that a woman is having. So we really have to look at it holistically.
Can I ask, so advice to women, like how would they know if those hormones are where they should be? Or is it just like, yeah, I've been partying way too long here? And
Yeah, absolutely. So there's lots of different ways. First of all, symptoms, right? What we just talked about. If we're noticing lots of mood swings and we're noticing fatigue and we're noticing weight gain, things like that, those are certainly signs. And then changes with menstruation is going to be a big sign of it as well. So irregularity, periods are getting heavier or lighter, things like that. So really being, I think it's helpful to be aware of what's normal and what's not, because for so long, women have just been told like, oh, this is just part of being a woman. And now we're really starting to unpack that and go, no, what is this supposed to look like? So I think getting some, education about that is
a great
really
point.
helpful.
Yeah.
So yeah, at times when we expect for these hormones to be kind of out of balance are puberty and what we call second puberty, which is perimenopause, happening usually in the 40s, something like that. And then postpartum. So we're naturally going to see some imbalance of.
So then more challenging, we'd expect more challenges in those times emotionally and possibly with mental health.
Yep.
Issues.
Because again, progesterone is that hormone that's going to help us relax and calm down. So when we think about things like anxiety, this is such an important part of it for women and for girls, especially when we think about puberty and our teenage girls. This is why we see such a huge incline in anxiety and depression in girls after they go through puberty.
Interesting. So you mentioned the different developmental phases, but then also postpartum. I don't know if you want to talk a little bit more about. I mean, there's so much packed in there in the process of trying to get pregnant, to being pregnant, to giving birth, and how that can relate to mental health.
Absolutely.
Infertility, and
all of it. Yeah. Yeah. So do you want me to start with postpartum? Postpartum, when we are pregnant, those two hormones, estrogen and progesterone, we make a ton of, more than we will ever make in our lives, in a normal cycle. I think it's something like 17 times more estrogen and progesterone than we would typically make in a monthly cycle. And so at the end of pregnancy, those hormones are super high. Within about a week or two of delivery, those hormones are back down to what they were before or even lower than what they were before. So it's the biggest hormonal swing that a woman will ever experience.
Really? Wow.
And, so this was our estrogen that helped us be really creative and full of life. And it was our progesterone that helped us calm down and sleep. And now they both plummet at the same time. And we are not getting any sleep. We are trying to learn how to take care of a baby. We have this 24/7 responsibility of keeping this baby alive. The mental load is insane at that point, all the things that you're thinking about. And so, women are vulnerable to anxiety and depression during this time. I think a lot of people know about postpartum depression, but we don't talk as much about postpartum anxiety. And even things like postpartum rage is a big part of it too, where, women are having these like bouts of just anger that is coming out. And that's a huge part of it as well. So there's a lot going on in that stage for sure.
Do you have any? You mentioned it is helpful to know what's kind of normal. Do you know any stats on how common is postpartum depression, anxiety?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think I have it here actually. About 12 to 15% of women will experience some sort of postpartum mood disorders. So we have what we call the baby blues, and that is what we consider just a normal part of the hormone swings that is happening there and the huge transition that's happening there. If anybody goes through, you have a major experience like birth or a cesarean, which is a huge surgery, on top of the hormonal swing, on top of getting no sleep, it's normal to feel emotional. And I usually will tell my clients that through the first 2 weeks, it's pretty normal and expected for emotions to be up and down and up and down. You're crying a lot, you're not getting a whole lot of sleep. But with baby blues, we are still going to have the highs and the lows. You're still going to have the excitement and the attachment to your baby as you're getting to know them. I always tell my clients the 2-week mark is a check-in. We want to see things kind of leveling out at 2 weeks to where, not that you feel like things are easy, but you feel like, okay, we kind of got this, right? We're in the swing of it a little bit more. We're a little more stable emotionally. We're able to sleep when the baby's sleeping, those types of things. And then from there, we just check in each week after that. And each week should just get a little bit more stable after that. So 2 weeks is really kind of the big point that we want to check in.
So, fun fact, all 3 of my sisters-in-law have had a baby in the last 6 months.
Oh, fun.
So Easter was very exciting because all of the babies were together. But I know I felt this as a sister-in-law, as a friend, of how can I care for them?
I know.
So are there, because I don't want to come across that I'm worrying about them, but I want them to know that I care for them. Is that just like case by case, or is showing up and saying, hey, like, can I hold the baby for a little bit? Is that helpful? Do you want me to do the dishes? Is that helpful? Like, are there things that we as friends of those who are going through that can do to help a new mom feel cared for, loved, but not that they're undervalued or doing anything wrong because they can't do it all right now?
Yeah. No, I think that's a great question. I think even just the way you ask that question is a testament to how things have changed in the last couple of decades. I think a vulnerability of it is that it can feel like everyone wants to take care of my baby. No one wants to take care of me. I think that's been a big shift in the last few years is we're realizing if we take care of the mother, the baby is taken care of.
Wow.
But yeah, there was, I think, just a common thing of like, well, I'll take the baby and you can do your thing. But we know like the mother baby dyad is so important for them to be together. So I think just even the way that you're asking that question is so helpful to think like, how can I care for the mother? And I think, as you know, we've talked about mental load. I think such a big part of it is how can you take that mental load instead of saying, how can I help you? Say, I'm bringing dinner, something like that.
Yep. Switch it around that way. They can't even say, no, we got this or so-and-so. Yep.
Yes. Things like that. Or I have an hour on Saturday. Can I come by and clean your bathrooms? Something like that. Again, it's not that they're not doing it all. And I think that there's still going to be an adjustment, and that's kind of part of their work as a mother is learning to accept help. But that's so huge for you to take that mental load off and just say like, I'm here and I'm going to take care of this, or, I'm going to help with this. Obviously we have to be careful with, when we're overstepping and that type of thing. And again, being really aware of the fact that not everybody wants you to just take the baby. Right? It's like, how can I take care of everything else so that you can take care of your baby? Because we know, again, when mom and baby are together, that's healing for both of them. And so the more that we can support that happening, the better.
Yep. Absolutely.
I'm learning so much today. And Beth probably would have wished I'd had this conversation before we had kids, so I could be more empathetic with her along the way. But
we've all learned so much, I think, over the last several decades about this.
Yeah, you wrote a great little devotional here, Your Time of 40 Devotions for Pregnancy, and I was struck in one of the quotes. You said, "I believe the transition to motherhood is not only a huge transformation in women's day-to-day life, but it is also a massive opportunity for spiritual, emotional, and relational growth." Could you say just a little bit more about that?
Yeah. I think part of it goes back to hormones, what we've already talked about, because estrogen is that kind of creative, proliferative hormone. I really think that partnered with the Holy Spirit is incredible, because there's so much that is happening. And when a woman is pregnant, she's really focused on the pregnancy. And so she doesn't always realize this, but there's just so much going on and changing in her through pregnancy. We will often say, when you give birth, of course you give birth to a baby, but you'll find that you also gave birth to a brand new version of yourself.
Wow.
Especially when it's your first time. You give birth to a mother.
Yeah, right.
For the first time. Yeah. And because it's so vulnerable, there's just, again, it's just fertile ground for so much to change. That doesn't always look pretty. Sometimes we are really wrestling with difficult emotions in pregnancy. Things from childhood are being processed in a whole new way. I was just having this conversation with a client recently where it's very common and normal for women to process their childhood so much in pregnancy, maybe for the first time, because they're about to be a mom and they're about to bring a baby into the world, and they're thinking about their own childhood versus what they want this baby's childhood to look like. And so there's just a lot, I think, that can surface in pregnancy that women may have not processed before. And obviously you're just changing the way that your day-to-day life looks, but that's really forcing you to be really intentional about what do you want your life to look like? What are you called to do here again? Because you just come face to face with that reality that you can't do it all. So what do you want to do? What do you want to focus on? And so there's just so much, I think, transformation that happens in that time.
Yeah. Wow. That's, we talked just a little bit about infertility and stuff, but you want to say more about that and how that relates to women's mental health?
Absolutely. Yeah. It's such an emotional experience and such a spiritual experience as well. I think that when a woman wants to be pregnant, she wants to be pregnant today, and it's really hard to be faced with the fact that might not happen right away. And I think the other thing that's really difficult with fertility especially is you're in such this limbo space of like, I could go about life as I know it for the next year, or I could find out in 2 weeks I'm pregnant and my whole life is going to change. And so, do I go for the job change now or not? Yeah. And then we have this like monthly thing that's happening. So every month you have this reality that everything could change. And then within 2 weeks, it could either be confirmed or denied. Yeah. And so there's just a constant up and down with it.
Yeah. I know when my husband and I have talked about having kids, it's not just the next couple months. I'm thinking about the next year. Like that's absolutely. Really what I have to consider, what he has to consider. It's not just a short window. Right. Like this. Yeah, absolutely. That makes so much sense. Yeah.
Yeah. And then, of course, when it doesn't happen, women are really wrestling with what is my purpose? I think that purpose is really a big part of it, because once you want to be a mom, that feels like your purpose, right? It feels like now my job is to bring a child into the world. And so when it's not happening, women are really wrestling with purpose. And then they're wrestling on a spiritual level of like, what does God have for me?
All right.
Yeah. And where their identity is.
Exactly. Yeah. And I'll really hear women wrestle with like, just maybe God just doesn't want me to be a mom, or I'll even hear things like, maybe it's a selfish desire for me to be a mom, which I mean, I think being a mom is the least selfish thing you can do, but that's how it feels. It really can be very, there's a lot you have to wrestle through spiritually through that time of like, what does God have for me? Am I doing something wrong that this isn't happening? Am I not praying hard enough or believing enough or surrendering enough? All of those things come into play.
Yeah. So if that is a part of their story, or even a woman who's single, or, children are grown and they're out, maybe they're a widow, like, why does hormonal health matter to them? Like, if kids aren't just in the picture, like, is there something of value for them at understanding their hormones? Because life is still life. Like, they have years ahead of them. Yeah. So what do you think about that?
Absolutely. I think it's been a common misconception, right? That hormones or fertility only matters if you're trying to get pregnant. And even in doctor's offices, sometimes women will go to the doctor for a specific concern and be told, like, come back when you want to have kids, or something like that. And so, if you're not being able to conceive, or it's just not something that's part of your life at that point, it's so important to know that hormonal health still matters, because this is your well-being. It has so much impact on your well-being, but also your long-term health. So when we think about post-menopause, there's still so much that what happened during your reproductive years is going to impact what happens post-menopause. And so it's so important, I think, for every woman to be aware of what's going on hormonally, whether it's about having kids or not. It's such a big part of their lives.
Yeah, we haven't talked as much about that later stage. Anything you want to say about that transition and how it affects mental health?
Yeah. Yep. So perimenopause will typically start in the 40s, somewhere around there, late 30s. And this is a time when...
So perimenopause, menopause, postmenopause.
Yes.
Kind of explain that.
Sure, I will. So perimenopause is what we call second puberty. It's when things start to change. So we'll start to notice first that progesterone drops off. So that cleaning lady, she kind of goes away slowly. And so that's a time in a woman's life when she is definitely vulnerable to lots of mood swings, lots of anxiety, depression. Sometimes even if she's never had anxiety before, this will show up. And of course, life is different in your 40s than maybe it was in your 20s. So we experience that differently. So that is typically about 2 to 7 years long, somewhere around there. Then later in that stage, estrogen drops off as well. So our party planner, she's like, bye, time to go. Okay, so then a woman stops having periods. And once she has gone a whole year without having a period, we call that menopause.
Okay.
And then after that is postmenopause.
Okay.
So the average age of menopause in the United States is 51 to 52.
Okay.
So when we talk about postmenopause, we're talking about women in their 50s and beyond. And so at that point, estrogen and progesterone are pretty much gone. They're not really part of a woman's, she doesn't have a cycle or anything like that after that. And so in some ways that's good because we don't have the swings that we're used to having. So in some ways there's some stability there, but there's also none of those hormones. And so women are actually pretty vulnerable to depression in the postmenopause stage. I actually saw a study where 28% of postmenopausal women were experiencing depression, which is a huge amount compared to, the 10 to 20% of women in general. So it is.
When you have hormonal changes, but you also have stage of life changes with empty nesting and lots of psychological things to work through and identity questions.
Sure. Yep. All kinds of things going on there. And so it is I think, a time to be really aware of mental health. It can be really easy, I think, to think, well, my hormones are gone and now, I'm not having to worry about that part of my life, but there is definitely still implications.
Do you have any advice for, sometimes it feels like the whole hormonal thing and PMS can almost become a little bit of a joke.
Yep.
And men, maybe especially, and like roll the eyes and here we go, like how can women advocate for themselves that how significant this really is and how important it really is?
I think education is so helpful. Even just learning the hormones. When I show a screen where I'm showing you this is what your hormones are doing throughout the month, that's like an aha moment for women. And I think the more that we can get husbands or men involved in those classes as well, the better. Because it is such a joke, like you said.
Yeah.
It is kind of just this is just what women do. And there really is so much significance to it. I also think it's really helpful to try to see the positive side of hormones as well, because it's really easy to just think that when we talk about like being hormonal or my hormones, it's always in a negative connotation.
Yeah.
These hormones are the best thing that God has given us. It's really such a beautiful design, the way that God has made it, so that women are cyclical and seasonal. We're not always the same. I think that's really beautiful. We have this party that comes in, and then we have the cleaning lady that comes in, and so what happens at the end of the cycle is progesterone leaves. And so that's the 3 days before menstruation. That's when we typically will see these PMS symptoms because progesterone is leaving. And so it's fairly common for women to have some moodiness at that time, maybe some changes in energy levels, and some physical symptoms start to come in as well, cramping and things like that. And so it's really easy to think this is a bad thing. But sometimes I wonder, like, maybe this is a good thing, right? Maybe the things that we haven't allowed ourselves to feel or give voice to the rest of the month, this is a time where this is going to come out and we're going to be able to talk about it and actually do something about it. So I think that can be helpful too, just to try to see the beauty in it. I
was actually having a conversation with my daughter, Hannah, last night, I think it was. And she was talking about a movie director that she really looks up to, and this movie director was talking about how at different times in her cycle different creative aspects of herself comes alive.
Absolutely.
And, you know, and it was really powerful to Hannah to hear a woman talk about the positives and how you could look at those changes in a very positive way and how it adds to creativity. And part of the comment was how often in that world, things are very linear.
Yep.
Which it's not set up then for cyclical creativity. You know, you have to kind of move from A to B. So she had to work to say, how do I figure out a way to use this more cyclic nature in a creative way?
Yeah.
It was a cool conversation.
Yeah, I think that is a huge topic of discussion right now. People are really getting excited about, like, how can I organize my life or set up my life to be in sync with my cycle rather than always fighting against it, or rather than always trying to wake up the same person every day. How can I actually allow these different aspects of myself to guide my work or my creativity or even my social life, right? Like, we're going to be different socially as well. So I think there is a lot of power in that. And when we can get to a place as a society where we are embracing that rather than trying to fight against it, I think we are going to really see a lot of positive changes.
As we start to wind down here, what advice would you have for women? What kind of resources are available if people are really feeling stuck in any number of these areas, including what kind of resources do you offer? I mentioned this devotional, which is fabulous, by the way. I loved, I mean, there's everything from scanning a QR code to get different recipes. And have you tried your own garlic onion
Oh, yeah.
tea?
A garlic onion tea. Yep. That was a huge staple in my life for a long time.
Yeah.
So that's where that comes from. But yes,
it's such a great resource. I would really recommend it for people. Where could they get this, by the way? I know we have it in our church bookstore here.
It is in the church bookstore. You can also get it on my website at kamischwartz.com.
Okay.
So it's there. I also do offer classes, so fertility education, and that's, again, applicable to all women, not just for women who are trying to conceive or trying to avoid pregnancy. It is applicable for everybody to just learn more about their body. And I think that is obviously what I would say is the first step typically to really diving into your hormonal health, because in those classes, not only will I teach like what's supposed to happen, but I help women understand how to decode their own cycle and learn what is happening. So there's lots of ways that God designed our bodies to communicate with us. So it's not just like this mystery of, I have no idea what's going on throughout the month. We can really actually look at it every day and have a good idea of what's going on each month. So I think that is so helpful for women, basically to learn how to chart ovulation.
Okay.
Because they can see what's happening in their unique body. And that will really be the catalyst for helping them know, like, where to get help, what types of resources or things should they, focus on. I am certified through an organization called FEMM, which is Fertility Education and Medical Management, FEMM. So they train educators like me, but they also train medical providers to really know how to dive into this. And I think what's so different about FEMM compared to other practices is that they are concerned about every woman, whether they are 11 or 49 or, wherever they're at. They really care about the hormonal health of all women. And so they have a great hormone panel that they dive into. So I always know if I send somebody to a FEMM provider, they're going to get really complete blood work. And we're probably going to find some things that we can work on. And, there's always we always have to wrestle through the fear of going to the doctor and potentially finding things out. What I will often tell my clients is the more we find out, the more we can change, the more we can work on, and the more abundant life you can experience, the more that we can address. And so we really try to come at it from that perspective. But I know it is just so much to wrestle through that anxiety. But I always recommend people find a femme provider in their area.
That's good.
Looking for like an integrative provider, or, you know, somebody who does more like functional medicine, I think can be really helpful too. So that's kind of the next practical next step.
You mentioned classes you do. Are there certain classes specifically?
Yeah, so I have one online that's on demand, and then occasionally I do classes in person. So we actually are doing one here at the church in June, so I'm excited about that, and we're just calling it a female hormonal health workshop. So it's really for girls from puberty all the way to through perimenopause, I should say. So it's open to all of the women in the church who really want to start to learn more about this and dive into to knowing what's next. So really enjoy. I have a mother-daughter class that I just taught this spring that was really fun. So there'll be some aspects of that, but it'll be applicable to all women.
Okay.
Very cool.
That's awesome.
I also wanted to throw out a couple of resources. I know some of the questions that you've asked me before, like what are you doing for fun, or what hobbies do you have? What do you do that just brings joy or excitement into your life? Because I think that's something that women, we can have a hard time doing, is our identity is in the making sure the home is put together, or our job, or taking care of the family. We can forget to neglect, like we just forget to take care of us and enjoy life and the hobbies or ways that God has designed us. So I also wanted to mention Annie F. Downs is one of my favorite authors. And she has a book called Chase the Fun. That's a devotional. And then another book that's simply That Sounds Fun. And it is all about finding hobbies, doing things that you enjoy, and really getting to your identity as a woman, so that you can enjoy the life that God has created, and not only be wrapped up in all of the to-do lists or what to do and how we're failing and have that negative self-image, but how can we have a positive outlook on life and get to enjoy life wholeheartedly and holistically with how God's made us in this world too, which those are also available on our bookstore.
Okay. Awesome. Yeah, and I'm excited about the class. I mean, again, the series is called Not Alone, and there's so much power in just finding community and talking to the people who have walked through similar things or are walking through it. So that class is a great opportunity for people to come and learn together, develop relationships, find support with each other. So I'm excited about that. And thank you for your time today and your expertise. And this has been a lot of fun.
You light up when you talk about all of this. Like you've made something that is hard to talk about, like even me, like this is harder for me to talk about. I've never been a medical personnel. I faint with blood stuff, like cringe internally, all that stuff. But you have made it so beautiful.
Oh, thank you.
And you've taken this side where the Lord has made us to be like this. So it's good, and really help uncover those lies that Satan can really put inside us. So Kami, you are totally in your wheelhouse.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I love this. I could talk forever about this. So thank you so much for having me on. I really appreciate it. It was so fun to prepare for it and think about it and then do it. So I had so much fun.
Well, thanks again for joining us for today's episode of the Maple City Podcast. You can watch for more episodes coming out on the Maple City Chapel app, and you can also find more information about our church, the events going on, the resources available to you. You can also join us on Sunday mornings at 8:30, 10, and 11:30. We hope to see you there. Until then, let's go and be the church.